From resolving disputes over their water license and claims to keeping tabs on how their rivals catch up with innovative. In this case, the U.S. government used improved equipment to remove Tony Beets from the situation, while Parker Schnabel walked away with the whole operation. Finding gold in the Klondike is no easy feat, and Tony Beets had to watch helplessly as his entire gold mining empire fell apart. Just as he believed he was about to enjoy the season of a lifetime, inspectors at the Indian River claim want to shut him down due to his antiquated wash plants and other equipment. It feels like he's stuck with no choice. Tony is now faced with the daunting prospect of never again being able to obtain that precious gold. To make matters worse, he is compelled to observe that youngster. During the reign of the so-called King of the Klondike, Parker Schnabel may enjoy his finest year to date. Come along as we observe Tony Beets deal with the myriad of problems that could derail his season. It appeared like Tony and his crew were in for a truly rough ride when they discovered that throughout the season, they encountered numerous disasters. The first of these was an inspector showing up out of the blue to shut down their operation at Indian River Claims. I suppose I should brush up on my reading skills because we apparently missed something in the license and whatnot. Were anything's forgotten, he had some problems with his water license, so allegedly I can only strip a very little area for a Class 3. So, that's all we can lose. A massive obstacle that was preventing Tony's operations from running smoothly. He and his crew were prepared for a spectacular season. Tony and his crew headed out to dig a roughly 15-acre plot of land. It was such a disappointment that they weren't even sure they could mine 1 acre because of all these obstacles. Tony was furious about it all. Circumstances, his whole team appeared to suffer a decline in morale. It must have felt like an even worse setback. Unpleasant news for Tony and his crew when they learned that thanks to Parker's meticulous preparation, Tony's youthful adversary's squad was achieving tremendous strides. It seemed like success was on the horizon, which made it stand out from Tony's previous approaches to his operations at the Indian River claim went from bad to worse when the claim started flooding. As a result, they were already behind schedule because to the time it took to pump out the water, and now they don't have a license for this season. What were their words down there? Rewrite a ton of content and submit it to the Lord. On top of everything else Tony had to handle was fixing up his largest wash plant, which was a major problem for him and his crew to tackle. You can imagine how furious they were about. Despite all the obstacles they were facing, they were determined to get to work. Progress was slow at first, but eventually they made it. It was something they were aware of. Unfortunately, the wash plant's revival was only the beginning of their numerous troubles. Just as they were dealing with one setup issue, inspectors showed up to inform them that they couldn't continue, dealing them a somewhat devastating blow. Given the circumstances, it's easy to see how the team's mood would have been severely dampened if they hadn't possessed the necessary water license. Despite their best efforts, it appeared that they would not be able to enjoy the rewards of their labor. Reason that this was their sole chance for success. Season was set to return to Paradise Hill. The idea of accepting this alternative was already challenging enough, given the site's long period of idleness. Getting the site up and running, let alone making any profits, was an even bigger challenge. With time running out, they couldn't help but feel jealous of Parker and his. When everything was operating well, Parker and his team had a good shot at having a record-breaking season, and no matter how frustrating, they realized they had to get back to work in order to solve their main problem, water management. Without a reliable supply of water, how could they keep up the smooth mining operation they required to begin working around this issue? The crew did an outstanding job despite the tremendous stress, and regardless, 9,000 ounces is still a ways off, but if we can get a couple hundred here each week, we can just give the mill everything they appear to be. Having to Tony's assertion of dominion over the Klondike and Gopperty, as the ancient adage goes, heavy is the head that wears the crown, persevered as the adolescents persisted in their quest to dig for gold, despite the obvious difficulty, looked to symbolize a sword, a trophy, or a victory. In some way, it offered them hope that they could find a way to make the best of this terrible season. After all, if Parker could pull it off, then why couldn't they? As the season drew to a close, the squad began to feel like they were slipping into a haze, which was understandable given how hard they had worked all year. It was challenging to get the Paradise Hill operation up and running, but they were determined not to give up if they wanted to make a dent in this season. They would have had to make a massive adjustment, but alas, that wasn't possible. The potential to restore the claims to their former glory by overcoming the obstacles the Indian River claims were simply too great to overcome at that time. Hence, they failed to accomplish. In spite of this, they persisted and overcame every obstacle they had set out to overcome since the season began. It's no secret that they've had more success in the past due to the difficulties they've faced, but as the saying goes, you can't win every time, king of the Klondike or not. Tony Beats, who was notorious for taking risks, would need to figure out how to deal with all of his challenges. Tony Beats and his team are putting all their equipment and iron into the Paradise, but there won't be any in your river. Instead, they're going to strip and open up as much of the land as they can. Unfortunately, the flooded land and rusty old wash plant they used didn't help the situation. Scenario in which they were financially and otherwise unable to. It's reasonable to assume that Tony and his team were already extremely irritated when they had to contend with the water license issue that reduced their mining land from 15 acres to just 1. With all these obstacles, it's safe to infer that their prospects of success were extremely low. As they continued their quest for what could be a record-breaking season, Parker and his team were the envy of all the miners, including Tony and his crew. In stark contrast to Parker's modern equipment and meticulous planning, Tony's crew clumsily continued using antiquated techniques. The situation was exacerbated because Tony and his team encountered seemingly endless problems at the Indian River claim. Their attempts to relocate their operations to Paradise Hill with their outdated and abandoned equipment only made things worse. Attempts to repair them only caused further delays in their operations. It was a nightmare. In spite of these setbacks, the team persisted in their pursuit of the precious metal. They made some headway, but it was still short of the 6,000 ounces of gold they had aimed for. Season in general, it's easy to see how everyone had to swallow their displeasure at not meeting their goals. It had to have been even more frustrating when they looked across to Parker and his crew, and thanks to their well-planned operations and well-maintained machinery, they dug up that gold as if it were nothing. I'm sure there will be some kinks to work out, but I can only imagine how much of a tribute to Parker's investments in cutting-edge equipment this must have felt. I'm enjoying it at the moment. It's washing rocks, but she'll need some tuning. Tony and his crew had to face the reality that the Klondike had changed over the years, but they hadn't kept up, so things were getting worse. Everyone must have been happy because it seemed like their investments were paying off. Even worse, they had no choice but to see Parker and his team's success as a sign of how well the Klondike was adjusting to the changing climate. They simply couldn't keep up with Parker and his vision for the future. This lesson may have been difficult to swallow, but they had to face reality. Change is the only constant.